2011 version of the Goffstown Budget Committee. We have convened together once again to hear budget details with our questions, and if Elizabeth, you would start the roll, I appreciate it.
Elizabeth DeBrule. Lisa Jukes.
Richard Meany. Ivan Bellavo. Guy Karen.
Dan Cloutier.
John Burt.
Steve Fournier.
Brian Lewis.
Phil Kendall.
Checker Hansen.
And that's 11 of us. I haven't heard from Bill Bates because he just walked in. And Dick Fletcher will be a little tardy. And the school representative, likely Jen Thoreau, I haven't heard from yet either, so we'll just wait at
They're
this.
having the area agreement meetings tonight.
Oh, it's tonight?
Coming in right
All
now.
right, well, if that's the case, then
There
I
she is
guess
right
we
there.
will, well, look at that, Jen is here. Okay, excellent,
School board starts late anyways.
all right.
I said school board starts late. They were finishing up
11,
supper.
12, that's 13 out of 14, we are here. I am going to welcome Town Administrator Sue to come on up, and let's continue the fun that we started 2 weeks ago. Did you want to come up too, Dawn, or?
I sent it to you.
All right, so if I go back and I look at the administration tab, I believe we went through finance and completed finance. Before I go further, do you guys have any further questions on town clerk elections or possibly finance? Mr. Bill?
Back during the Saturday presentation, I had asked about monthly revenue numbers, and I had asked about a breakout of economic development activity. So I don't know if you have it or whether you want to send it or whatever. I just want to remind you.
Yeah.
Not tonight, but.
Right, but actually you can tell on your blue sheets, you have, on 2011, you have an adopted budget and a working budget. Wherever the numbers are different between those two, those were the lines affected by the reorg.
I did talk about phones, I didn't talk about computers. If you have computers that make noise, go ahead and make them.
Is there, are you in a position to answer questions about, I'm just asking.
Yeah, go ahead.
Economic development and the components of what it is they do?
Yeah, that'd be the next section. First, I'm gonna see if anybody has, you'll be the first question up, because that is the next section. Anybody town clerk, election, or finance at all? Okay, those are the first three. Okay. Economic, admin and economic development. Go Bill.
Put me on the spot here.
You betcha.
Really, I'm just trying to get a sense of, once I do get a chance to look at the breakout of the numbers, as you just said, I'm trying to get a sense of how much time is spent in activity that's entitled economic development for the town, number one, and I'm trying to get a sense of what kind of work product they're producing. Because, not because you've put them together this year, that really doesn't matter, really. It's just more about, I wasn't totally satisfied last year, because just the way we went about it. But this year, I would like to know more about what it is they're doing, the work product, and then how many hours are dedicated or associated with how many people to do that kind of work.
Okay. We have a full-time position called Assistant Town Administrator / Economic Development. That's one of his many assignments is economic development, and he's a staff liaison to the Economic Development Council, which we have our selectman rep here tonight, is also the board's liaison to economic development, so he can probably fill in more details on what they're doing. The website was one of the big accomplishments. Our website, the origins of it came from economic development. They're the ones that had the desire to have a website way back when. They have improved on the website. They are putting businesses on the website, empty parcels, if you look. The GIS maps and vision appraisal is also on the website because we heard that that was a tool developers look for and businesses look for when they're searching out a town. So that was their major focus, I believe, last year.
So
And this year?
website last year was major focus.
Yes, and now they're expanding on that new website by pushing out the message with a newsletter. And they're doing newsletters, and you can sign up for that newsletter on the website. And they do this newsletter, and they all participate. The whole council writes an article for it, and the coordinator puts it all together for them. And that's pushed out through the means of that new website. So GIS Vision online.
They've spent a lot of time on the
business-
business directory, haven't
The
they?
business
Because
directory,
that
yes,
was
they're-
really dated, and I know they've been going through and updating it.
They have been updating it. Each member is taking so many businesses to visit each month and getting the new data to the Economic Development Coordinator.
They're also trying to establish a presence with the Goffstown Business Expo, which I understand is continuing.
That's
In the
one the
future.
Lions Club does.
The Lions, yeah, that's the one they did for the 250th, and then they're going to, as I understand it, they're going to be continuing it
Yes,
in the
and that
future. And
started 2
economic
years ago.
development has been trying to work with that.
Right. And they work with Main Street Program for this area of town. And they also watch if there's any zoning proposals that may negatively impact businesses, they will comment on those. When someone comes in and is looking to relocate, they talk to them. And they work with DRED, Department of Resource and Economic Development for the state. They've had contact with the Business Incubator in Manchester. We had looked at the mill building becoming our own business incubator, but until that changes hands, that probably won't happen.
That's a shame. I think it's a great idea.
So you said website, interacting with planning, talking to people, working with DRED. So how many people spend time on this?
How many members of the Economic Development Council? Whatever that is, 7?
Let's go with 7.
7 members
yes.
there. And then we have the Assistant Town Administrator coordinates their efforts.
Okay, and so because I'm only looking at this year's, so the breakout of the economic development piece, what those 7 people produce in terms of a work product is how much?
Well, Lena, are we getting confused? You realize
The volunteers,
the
the Economic Development
EDC is a volunteer group, okay?
I'm talking about the money that's budgeted for the category economic development. That's what I'd like to know.
63,100, right? That line?
Actually, 41,100. You're talking about the salaries and benefits?
Everything.
Everything, okay. Why don't we, how many people are employed or paid out of this category?
The Assistant Town Administrator is the only one paid, and one of his duties is economic development.
Okay, here's where this, it's $272,000.
Oh, no, that's admin.
That's
Where are
admin
you?
and economic development,
Admin and economic development
41,502.
is mostly administration, and one of those people in administration has also the duty of economic development.
Bill's
I
question,
knew that, but I was trying to get the breakout part.
right, Bill's question has to do with that line, and can we break
Regular wages,
that budget idea?
How many people fall into that?
Yeah,
four full-time,
okay.
a quarter of a full-timer, and 1 part-time custodian.
Okay.
The full-timers are myself, the Assistant Town Administrator, the Executive Secretary for the Board of Selectmen, and the Sewer Administrative Assistant.
Ah, okay.
And you'll see an offset
gotta-
for her in the revenue.
Okay,
The a quarter of a full-time is the building superintendent that oversees all the municipal facilities, and then there's a part-time custodian.
I got Guy first, then Philip.
Thanks.
That's it for now, for me.
Okay,
Thank you.
So just looking at the Grassmere facility,
Yes.
Can you let us know what's going on over there, that the budget is the request is nearly double what we spent on it last year?
And you're at
That's
50.
41,502, 50225.
Down
Grassmere facility expenses. The request is a little high, I'm just wondering what we're doing over there.
Well, as you know, it's an old building, and one thing that we have to do, that we found out this year, is to replace the oil tanks down there. There's 2 oil tanks in the basement. And they'll be replaced with probably a double-wall tank, which is the way to go right now.
So the bulk of this is a oil tank replacement?
No, that was a surprise for this year, so that line will be overspent this year. But heating oil is budgeted in that line for 5,100. Propane, because the second floor is heated with propane, is 900. Electricity is budgeted at 1,000. Water, 400. Maintenance and supplies, 1,000. And I just want to point out that we do have a revenue offset from Mary Lou School that rents there of 4,500. Plus, we prorate their share of utilities.
Oh, okay.
Can I just jump in with one thing? Because I'm in charge of the restoration for the Grassmere Town Hall.
As long as it's okay with Phil.
Bill, is that okay?
No?
Okay.
Go right ahead.
The second floor is in the process of being renovated. We got an L-CHIP grant, and it's going to be opened probably by January.
Oh.
So, and it'll be available, it's a public facility, it'll be available for meetings. It's a beautiful building, by the way. And we got several grants. We got the L-CHIP grant, and we got a state council for the art grants to restore all the artwork in it, and it's all hardwood floors, it's got a stage. It's really, really nice. So I don't know if that has been factored in for, normally we don't heat the second floor, because nobody's using it. But I think they're planning that we're gonna have to start heating it if people are gonna use it.
Okay. So who do we talk to rent that? Not rent it, but have it
Catherine,
meeting?
right now, we're still gonna be working that out.
Okay.
how-
Because the budget committee met there many, many years ago to take a tour of the facility while it was in the beginning stages, I think, of rehab, and they had done a lot to it by then.
The HDC will be inviting the selectmen and the budget committee to come and see it once the restoration is finished. This is the second to last restoration phase.
Super.
I think it was 4 or 5, just years ago we were there.
Yes, it was a while.
It was, well, I was on the budget committee, so it was at least 4
Yep,
years
so
ago.
it could be, yep.
Okay, you mentioned part of this total, Sue, is, this propane, electric, et cetera, but that's not broken out in here. Where did you get the breakout?
We did a 3-year average, and then we looked at future use for the second floor.
Okay.
And you have a worksheet there that details that line, and that's how you were able to read it for us.
Okay. All right, thanks.
Phil?
Well, I guess I'm gonna tag on, this is my first question, but since you just mentioned that it's gonna be used, second floor, you only have $900 in there for propane. That line's pretty much gonna get overspent if it gets used.
Where are you looking at that line?
Well, the line you just said, the breakdown that you
breakdown
just
I
got down was
$400.
$900 for propane for the
Right.
second floor. And that was a 3-year average, but 3-year average, it hasn't been being used.
Right.
If it's gonna start getting used, that $900 is gonna get blown out of the water.
We haven't entirely worked all this out yet because we have been determined not to seek any more public funds for the restoration. And so all of our money has been going, or all of our energy has been going to getting grants to pay for the restoration. But I mean, I think in the future, we are envisioning some sort of situation where that will be offset by rental costs. It'll be available for town groups to use for free, but if people want to have a business meeting there or a luncheon, then they would pay a rental fee and rent it.
Okay. And my other question really was, and it may be ill time, but mentioning revenues coming in for positions, the sewer. Where does that show up? I'm looking at the revenues and I don't see that revenue coming in for that.
Transfer from the enterprise fund.
Yeah,
sewer
that one's
enterprise
that one's an enterprise fund, so it's at the bottom. And that would be under transfer out, 39,140. That's part of the total, $189,635.
Yes,
Yeah.
for her wages.
Yeah, well, there are a lot of
And
other
benefits.
things than
And yeah.
189,000, but
Sure, there's offsets
that's where
for
that would
DPW
be
work.
buried.
Can we get a breakdown with that
Sure.
that
Can we?
enterprise fund? Can we request that? The
Can we get a
breakdown?
breakdown of what is coming back to us
Sure.
from the enterprise fund?
What makes up
think you
that
prob-
189?
We can do that.
Okay.
You know, the percentage of the back on track, the time of
Sure, but I guess this,
people at DPW, the finance time
Yeah.
that they dedicate to assisting sewer. So there's a lot of components. We can get you a list of those components.
appreciate it, thank you. That's it.
Bill?
Just a follow-on question on the rental, the revenue offset of 4,500 for the daycare. How many square feet are they renting?
Oh, I didn't bring that with me. I can get that to you, though.
I just, the follow-on
It's-
question to that would be, what's the market rate for renting? And are we aligning ourselves annually with market
We-
rates?
We went through this one
No.
year.
It must be lower, a lot lower.
Because 4,500 doesn't, just on the surface, doesn't make sense, but I don't know what market rates are, so that's why I'm asking.
Right. Is Mary Lou a kindergarten
No.
program?
preschool.
It's preschool. Okay.
They rent half of the first floor, but I couldn't tell you offhand how many
Right.
square feet that is.
And the first floor also includes unavailable space that's the entryway for the second floor. So it's really not a whole half,
And the
is
whole
it?
meeting, yeah,
Right.
Yeah, that,
and the whole meeting room, and the kitchen,
The
and
kitchen
a
area.
bathroom.
right, so it's really kind of small.
It
but-
is actually
It is.
very small.
But the answer to the question, Sue, you're right, or to add to that, yes, we went through this about 6 years ago, this whole Mary Lou, how much they were paying for rent. And I think there's a few parents in here who use Mary Lou, I'm not sure what their rates are, but I think they're also lower than average rates at Mary Lou.
Well, it's a cooperative,
It's
so the
co-op.
parents pitch in.
Right. So it's kind of a community place. I mean, they do pay for some of the share of their share of the utilities, and they pay some rent. But market share of space, if I was to guess, is definitely lower than the average market share for that square footage, even though it is a small square foot space. But they do that by providing a community service by having a cooperative.
When we did the comparison and sought market share back then, real estate agents found it difficult to put a value on it.
Okay, and that's, if I think it was.
Go ahead.
And if you'd have to, it would do you well to go and visit the building. One, it's a very interesting building, very historic. Regarding the Mary Lou Center, if you saw it, it is not your traditional office space that you would go and rent. And I think it suits well for what they're doing there for the daycare, but you would not say, I'm going to set up office there and you for other types of business without having some type of work being done. It's a very unusual setup. And the other part of the process, that it's more of an offset regarding the heat and the fuel and electricity to keep, to sustain the building.
Further questions for now on admin and economic? Bill?
The final one on that would be, so the 4,500 revenues outset, excuse me, is 4,500 this year. That's trended upward at what kind of pace?
I think they're in the second year of a 2-year contract next year, so that is the rate. And then we
Oh,
revisit
2
it every 2 years.
That's it?
Okay. Did the copier rental contract go up? Is that the majority of the increase on line 54430?
Yes, copier and postage machine.
Still have one?
Go
Me
ahead,
too.
Guy.
And Sue, we have a formerly zero line for minute takers. We formerly didn't have minute takers.
Correct. What happened here?
Which
One,
line?
part of that is a transfer from planning, when planning was planning and economic development, for the minute taking of
Okay,
the
got it.
economic development meetings.
Okay, makes sense.
And a little bit of it is to be able to have a minute taker at the selectmen's meeting when Catherine's on vacation. All these years, she's been good enough to accommodate us and not take a vacation on a Monday, believe it or not. So she'd be here to take a
that
minute.
She's dedicated. She is dedicated.
You have Steve there to take the minutes.
Boy, that'll be a short minute.
Okay, thanks, Sue.
Yep.
Continuing with admin and economic development, anybody? Let's turn a page. That doesn't mean we can't come back. It just means for right now, you've had enough. So turn the page again and go to what appears to be tax collection. And this is one of the rare, and I think there was an adjustment. Did you tell us there was an adjustment? I'm trying to get my mind back of personnel again.
No,
What were the two
One-
departments where there was an adjustment again?
planning, admin, and finance.
Okay.
No adjustment here.
That's right, because there were some numbers that were lower on one end and then went up on the other because of the okay.
Right.
There's a pretty big drop in benefits. Is that somebody changed their plan or?
Change in selection, yes.
Okay.
That's a HIPAA question.
Oh. I wasn't
Well, I didn't
asking
ask
who.
That's true, but that would likely be the answer.
Unfortunately, there's only one person.
Oh, I didn't know that. Sorry.
Oh, we didn't know that. We do now. Do you have available the list of the employees who are budgeted in here and the matrix of their salaries and the benefits as it goes across with totals for,
I can get that to you.
could you please?
Yeah.
Okay.
Did you write that down? Employee list. You want them by office?
Yes, please.
They're leaving.
We good to go with tax?
Yep.
Collection?
I got a couple.
Bill, John?
Sue, let me look to see which line I'm looking at. It's 44,300, which is employee development,
In which office?
tax
We're
collector.
still in tax,
Yeah.
okay.
What does that entail?
That is mostly the annual conference, which by law, we have to send them, the tax collector too. And her professional dues is also in there,
By law?
by law.
Well, that could be changed.
You
Tax
can, but
collector?
good luck.
Not by next year.
Good luck.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's valuable for them to learn any changes in the law. They go over that at the conference.
How long is it?
2.5 days.
Thank you. I was going to say 3.
And this year, in September, it was Monday, Tuesday, and part of Wednesday, was it not? Or maybe half a day on Monday. So that would be 2 days.
So what'd they serve for lunch, Dan?
Well, for the last number of years, it's been, the reason is, for the last 8 years, I've been there. Well, not the tax collectors, I've been at the clerks' conference, because my day job at the time was to present to them. But there's the clerks, so you also see the same thing with the clerks. The town clerks have the same thing in the law, so that they can get updated from the Secretary of State and the Division of Motor Vehicles and all the things that they're required to do in the law. There are a lot of things. Dog licenses. No, we're not registering cats yet, I don't believe. But that is available in the law for a town to actually register cats, believe it or not.
Also,
Okay.
in that category also is assessing and welfare.
There you go. Lots of different things. Next question.
And who hosts that?
The Tax Collectors Association.
Tax Collectors Association? No. And then on lines 45030, which is tax collector consultant,
Yes.
what would that entail?
That entails hiring a consultant to do title searches during the lien and tax deeding process.
Oh, okay. All right, I guess that's it. Thank you.
Now, when you said title, that's for when the town wants to take property?
When we lien, we have statutory
even leaning.
requirements to notify all mortgage holders and anyone with an encumbrance on the property.
Okay.
And so we hire a consultant to do that.
Do you know how many services we used, or what, I mean, what's the word? How many liens we attempted to go toward?
How many properties are lien right? I don't have that number on the top of my head, but I could get it for you.
Yeah, could you?
Or how many lien searches were done this year? Is that what you want to know?
Well, I guess, how many people were behind enough where a lien was started and attempted? And I'm sure at some point, the people, the bank or whoever, you know, paid it up quick, but I was just curious on how many went to that level, or that spot.
I can get that.
To get a little even further than that, to get a better analysis, how many years is the property behind on paying taxes before the selectmen have traditionally opted to put a lien on the property? Are we talking,
No, you have to, you don't have an option on leaning. It's automatic.
the liens are automatic for
Right,
what
the
period of
tax
time?
deeding is at the discretion of the
Okay,
selectmen.
so
That's
what-
taking the property after 3 years of liens.
Okay, so how long before the liens have to be done? How long is it have to be in arrears? I'm trying to match the lapse with the budget.
Tax year starts April 1st. The liens have to be done by the following, I want to say it's 18 months, so it must be the end of September.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, the reason is because we're looking at now, if we're having a bad economy, this year by September, were those who haven't paid the last 3 tax bills, for instance, which would be April and December of 2010 and April of 2011. Or is that a reasonable presumption, if it's 18 months?
And
Could check with Gail.
I've been looking at the deeding so long, you know, we've had some properties up for deeding right now.
What I'm
That have
trying to
been
match
banded.
up is when something occurs, the budget to do that is years later, in effect, for a lien and a consultant to look at the property and the deed and everything else.
She said her lien, her consultant line is going up because we also have betterment assessments now. So if someone doesn't pay their betterment assessment
Okay,
in a timely way,
Yep.
we also have to look,
okay.
What's a betterment assessment?
when we do a public project to bring municipal water to Lynchville Daniels Park this year, for example. They get a betterment assessment till that bond is paid
Okay.
down,
Okay.
in addition to the taxes.
Okay.
It's a win-win situation for us who live down there.
So that the rest of the town isn't paying for
In the
your
pay for our
sewer.
water, that's essentially what it is. It's that, those people, when that water's brought on,
Right.
are fronting the full cost of that.
Unlike the hydrants,
Well,
we don't have to
excluded the
pay for the
hydrants.
sewer. Okay.
But the taxpayers are paying for the hydrants.
Oh, yeah. Yes,
And when it was brought down there, it was said not by 1 nickel would be used by tax dollars.
for sewer.
No, for
We
water.
won't go down there. We'll take that later. Further on tax collection? Revaluation of property? Mr. Guy?
Yeah, Sue, you know right where I'm going.
I do. Consulting,
Legal and consulting, those 2 lines, 45020 and 030.
legal, we have, an appeal that will end up in court or BTLA.
Appeal of
A-
an assessment?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
Just out of curiosity, is that an Elm Street property?
No.
Okay. No, just
No, you
curious.
didn't file a lawsuit.
No, no, I was
Yeah,
just
they
curious.
lost it.
Do we need to up that for some reason?
You might want to double or triple that.
And the consultant line is up because we're going back to our list and measure. We do 1/5 of the town every year. And it costs us $20,000 a year to hire a consultant to do that.
Then why isn't that constant year after year if we do it every year?
Because we took a year off and just did the values this year. We didn't do a list and measure this year. But if you go back, what was it?
2010 was 5,000.
5,000, that was the end of the list and measure, and the assessor did a lot of it that year himself, and we only used 5,000 in consulting fees. But we should have started this year back on the cycle, but we didn't.
This shows we used 0 that year. We
I
budgeted
think
5.
Scott, he did a lot himself. He went
Yeah, he
out,
did.
and so it ended up in his salary line. I don't think we paid for a consultant, or obviously from here, we did not pay a consultant fee in 2010.
Right. Or last year. Okay.
I don't,
Right.
so we do this, this is 1/5, do it every 5 years, so you're saying it's $100,000
Yes.
to do this? Why aren't we doing it ourselves again? then?
He does as much as he can. That's why you see it peter out in the 4th and 5th year. But he gets all the utilities and the
It's
commercial done.
It's zeroed out in the 4th and 5th year.
Yeah,
It happened to be that way.
We got fortunate.
yeah, Scott did quite a bit himself. So he's contracting for 800 properties, and he's estimating the rate at $25 per parcel for a list and measure.
So we have 4,000 properties that we basically assessed, 800 a year.
5,000, yeah.
4, 5,000,
We
okay.
bill 6,400, but some of those are vacant lots. So we don't do.
So are we looking at 20,000 each year for the next 5 years, or is it gonna peter out to
It'll
0
it'll
and 0?
probably- It will probably peter out. I'd say your first 3 years, you're looking at 20,000. And we'll see what Scott can get done. Depends how busy he is on other things like appeals and court cases
He says $25 per property.
for a list and
Yeah.
measure, yeah.
So is that a locked rate for the next 5 years?
Depends if we go out and do it that way with an out clause. We haven't done the contract yet.
Thank you.
Not having
My next
been,
question.
not having been through this, what do we get for our $25?
They go out to each property, they take an updated photo of the property, and they do a list and measure. So they measure all the structures on the property, they list everything. If they can get inside, they get inside. However, there's no requirement to be allowed inside the home. So then they have to estimate based upon past records. So if they see an addition to the house that wasn't on the record, they'll add the addition and measure the outside.
Are we required to do this, Sue?
Yes, we are.
Yes.
You baited
Department
her
of-
with that question.
Department of
Yes.
Revenue Administration requires a list and measure and an update every 5 years.
So we have to do it.
Right. This goes back to the equalized state property because of the school funding issue. And it's all from the last 20-plus years.
I have a general question about the whole
Yep.
approach. Is there a way to do this, do the entire town in 1 year?
Yep.
You can.
Anything with
You
money.
hire a bigger company than what we've been hiring at a higher cost because they have more overhead.
A higher overall cost over
Yeah.
what we spend?
We could, you think anybody who wanted, if we could do that, but just pay them 20,000 a year for the next 4 or 5 years, get it all done this year?
And that's why I answered Phil's question that we've got it under contracted services, but 1 year we were fortunate to find a unemployed assessor.
Ah.
And we did hire him part-time
Okay.
to get it done. So we look at whatever's best and try to stretch the dollar.
Think you had your hand up, John?
Yes, thank you. Sue, you mentioned about people possibly not allowing them, or the assessor in their home, which I guess is a new law. How many people are taking advantage of that? Or I don't know if it's.
Oh, I don't know. We haven't been out to list and measure this year, so that new law went into effect,
Yeah, this year,
right.
yeah.
So we haven't done it
What's-
yet.
What new law?
Yeah. Now we're curious. What new law are you talking about?
In rare cases, and I was just wondering if anybody was exercising it. In rare cases, if you don't want somebody in your home, you don't have to allow
In
it.
every case?
Well, that was in,
That's not new law.
that's not new unless you guys codified it. It's
No, yeah,
always
no, it
been-
went through.
Well,
The assessor, if you didn't, yes, okay.
if you didn't want the assessor to come in your house 3 years ago, they didn't
Have
come in
to,
your
right.
house.
I agree.
Nothing's changed.
I agree, but then at that point, they could have, I'm trying to think how the law was written.
Okay.
They could have assessed it as they saw fit.
Ah, okay.
Now,
There's,
They do
there's
anyways.
others.
there's something else that's
Yes.
addition, okay.
So I was just curious.
If you didn't allow them in, you didn't have recourse then.
Yeah,
Ah,
now you
right.
do. So I was just
Okay, I
curious
get
if
it.
anybody has.
They could have come back and say, well, you don't let me in, that's it. You got a $500,000 house,
Well, it
They
has to
can't
be
do
something within reason.
Well, yeah, they,
What would happen?
well, yeah, it wouldn't have been my house.
I
My
don't even-
neighbors
I don't
perhaps.
even want to go down that road.
All right, good,
That's a
because we
blood
know what
pressure
yours
issue
is
for
worth,
Guy.
you know, right there on the water, no, I'm kidding.
That posh resort he has on the lake.
Nah. Revaluation of property? We get the hint?
I want to,
Go ahead.
is the assessor's position, that's, how is that position filled?
How is the position filled, like any other position in town?
Is there, who makes the decision?
Ultimately,
Hmm.
Board of Selectmen.
Okay, thank you.
It's your fault. Should I go down and ask a curious question and say, is anybody hired without the Board of Selectmen signing off on it?
No?
Okay. Just makes it easier for any further questions, future questions.
Kind of on the same tact, does the assessor, there's an assistant, is she formally an assistant assessor, or is she works?
She's a secretary.
She's a secretary. Would it, I don't know enough about duties, but would it be possible to sort of have somebody with assessing experience that could work this sort of yearly assessment into their duties?
No, well, she does far more than a secretarial position. And she does all the elderly revals, revaluations of elderly for and the disabled, for the deferrals and the exemptions. Plus, she schedules all of Scott's work and handles the counter work when people come in with questions about their assessing,
Okay.
because he's out in the field most of the time.
I mean, not that I want to be hiring more people, but I mean, I'm just wondering if there isn't some, if assessing has a little more than they can handle, if there isn't room there to hire somebody else that then could reduce this consulting cost, but I guess not.
Guy?
Are there not towns or entities in New Hampshire where the assessor's position is an elected position?
Not that I know of.
This really doesn't have to do with budgeting, I think, so maybe I ought to go down another road. My point on assessing, and the reason I'm asking the question is that it's completely subjective. We could have 10 assessors from 10 different towns, and they will come into Goffstown, assess every property, and we're gonna have 10 different results, 10 different totals. So, because there's an interest from the town's perspective on what the assessor does, I wonder, I don't know, I've got some questions about this whole process anyways, but you know what? I'm getting away from the budget aspect of this, so I'll take it up
There's an
offline
assessing
somewhere.
standards board to
I understand that, but
regulate this and to get equity between all towns. That's as a result of the state education tax.
I'll tell you why I've asked is that, and I'll leave it at this. I had an assessor from another town, a friend of mine, assess my property, and it was completely different. Now, granted, it might have been done in, 2011, where my place was assessed in 2009. The economy was different. And then, of course, I question the equity of all of that for the taxpayers in the first place, where somebody who's assessed today is assessed for less than if they had been 3 or 4 years ago. It affects revenue in town. One of these days, we need to look at this whole process, but anyways, I'm all done with revaluation of property. 41.5.
Cool. Anybody else with questions?
Thank you for that.
Because I wasn't sure where
Sorry.
it was going. Which is, you would hope that the standards board, because the people that we hire, there's a requirement that they're certified or
Yes.
something? Okay. The answer was yes.
And our assessor sits on the Assessing Standards Board, and he's a former member of the BTLA.
Okay.
Mhm.
Oh, he was?
Mhm.
What years? You remember?
Don't remember.
Okay.
What's BTLA?
Board of Tax
bo-
and Land Appeals.
Oh, all right.
State agency,
Where you can
board
go
prison
before you go to court.
supervisor from 94 to 2003.
I'm a hard enough time with 3-letter acronyms.
That's one of the adjudicative boards that you can actually, it's as good as going to court. In fact, it's instead of going to court. Anyway, that's an aside. Do we sway and flip the page Let's do that.
Let's sway.
IT.
I'd rather
We already
swagger.
did IT, didn't we?
Yes, we did.
We already did it.
That's right.
Yeah, swagger.
Do you remember what line 48450 was for?
Yeah.
I
Now
wrote
there's gonna be a
notes.
quiz.
Yes, well, it's gonna be a quiz, because if someone comes up and makes a motion on that, we're gonna have to know what it is.
Computers and
Communication.
Right.
can't leave without my
Laptops
glasses.
for emergency vehicles.
There we go. Yes. That was the big-
Planning and zoning.
That was the big one, wasn't it? The laptops?
Yeah, that was very expensive. It was
Before you go on,
71,000,
when,
not just for those, but,
When we talked about the IT last time,
Yes.
I wrote a note to myself, and maybe have the same, that we would do a list of equipment, of the equipment purchase plan. I don't recall having received that.
I have not received, you asked for a list of,
Somebody did, I don't know.
oh,
But
That
I
was
just
probably-
wrote it
I
down.
asked that during, that was,
did you get that? You didn't get that, because I didn't get that.
Okay.
No,
I've
I
got
did-
it. It
you're
just
right, I
came
did
in
ask that
today,
question.
actually. Let me send it to Goffstown Budget,
Yes, please.
and you'll distribute from there?
And I'll distribute it from there.
Okay.
Thank you.
I believe I asked for.
Nice pick, Richard. Elizabeth?
We're on
Oh,
planning and zoning, right?
not yet. Almost. Almost got there. I think Phil
No,
had something else.
I believe my question was a list of all the equipment that they have and how they're cycling them through, what their plan is, so.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we know what the replacement cycle kind of
All
looks
right,
like.
so we can
Okay.
plan, kind of know what's coming next year and where they're
Okay.
going.
Budget account.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Planning and zoning, no.
Go planning and zoning, Elizabeth.
Swagger over.
My question is about legal services. Now, I know that this line is, it hasn't changed that much, what we have budgeted for. But I know that it can go all over the map, and I'm wondering if I understand correctly, this is where the town incurs most of the legal expenses, right?
Yes.
Planning and zoning.
why it says
Is there
legal
any
services.
way to sort of limit our liability here, that anything that we can do that we haven't done? Like, I remember the chief talking about, I know you guys are laughing because you're like, we've already been down this road. But, I know the HTC is looking at some things, zoning and planning. If the chief had mentioned, Chief Sullivan had mentioned that they had somehow avoided a lawsuit or managed to come out of a lawsuit because they had these standards. Planning and zoning, is there anything else we can do?
Well,
To cut
we
down on these
always
costs.
advocate training for new members, whether they're on planning board or the ZBA, and there are courses and law lecture series they can take on subject matters. But sometimes, no matter what decision you make in planning or zoning, you're gonna get sued either way.
Well, it seems like
Whether
that's
you
been the
say
way
yea
it's
or
been
nay.
lately, you know, it's like,
No matter
either way,
what.
the people are suing. Is there any way to take a more proactive stance to this and somehow make sure when people buy their property, they are aware of the zoning ordinances or the requirements? Seems like a lot of people end up applying for variances, and that this is one of the big things that ends up in a lawsuit, either from the neighbors or the people involved, or.
I
Okay.
think it's a reflection of society.
Everybody just wants what they want, and they don't care about the rules.
Or
Yes.
even if they do follow the rules, the neighbors want something different.
Different.
And it's just a reflection of society, perhaps.
Okay.
Bill?
I think your question actually is interesting in a different way, because we never get to see a line that stays the same for this long. So, I mean, is it actually possible to spend the same amount each year for this many years and and not see a change, or have an unspent amount, or whatever? Because I rarely see a line so constant, so I'm.
This went up a while ago. It had been like a 40,000, it went up to 56,500. Because it was overspent one year, I think it was like 70,000 spent.
Yeah.
So we didn't get what we requested, but we did get an increase. And now the numbers are down in terms of applications before the board. So we should see a little lower number. But there's always the zoning piece that can come up anytime.
Are we expecting a higher number of applications coming in 2012?
Don't know, we just kept it the same.
Dick?
That's one of those lines you never know.
We can hope so.
Go ahead, Dick.
Yeah, well, I'm just looking at that line, and it seems that right now, it shows
What line is it?
they're going to spend 15,000.
45020.
Been a change in it, or do you know of some
Oh, legal
larger amounts coming?
Yeah, we have one that will probably end up in Supreme Court, and that is quite expensive to defend.
Will it be this year or next year?
It's on its way.
Okay.
If,
And most of the cost will probably be next year.
if the paperwork gets filed, is that an encumbrance against 2011 funds? Or is it,
No, because the services, if the services are provided in 2012, they come out of the 2012 budget. We don't
even if it's
encumber for labor.
contracted prior to?
You don't contract, it's an hourly rate for,
Okay.
and you wouldn't know how much, right?
I mean, you might be able to encumber some money, I would think.
So lawyers aren't going to give me a good fixed rate to go in the Supreme Court? All right, I get by the giggles, no. All right. What was it, Phil?
Well, no, I agree with both. You don't know what the final number is, but why couldn't you encumber some money since you know you're going to? It's gonna cost you something.
There is a legal standard for what you can encumber, and you gotta have a contract. And you can have a contract for, so that's, hit us with something, Don. Mesmerize
It's
us.
state statute. I can tell you what the statute is, actually. It's RSA 32:7. Talks about lapsing of appropriations. And one of the exceptions is what you just said, if there's a contract in place.
And an hourly contract isn't a definitive contract.
Right.
It's pay as you go.
Couldn't we take it one step further and knowing the type of case that's going to Supreme Court, know that it's gonna be,
Well, it's not definite.
okay, but if you, I mean, paperwork's being filed or whatever, at that point, say at some point you know it's definite, could you not set up a contract, establish a contract for a certain amount that could be encumbered, and then continue on afterwards with a different contract with that same person for that same case?
No, because you don't know the cost. You don't know the number of hours that will be incurred in preparing for that case.
Understood, but you can make,
Well, thinking out of the box, you can say, okay, can we contract for the first 100 hours at certain rate and say, boom, that's what it is?
Well, we have the same hourly rate.
Okay.
So
Okay.
it's a number of hours you don't know.
okay, but.
And if those number of hours are being provided in 2012, our auditor would say, hey, they're providing the service in 2012, it comes out of your 2012 budget, not 2011.
Unless you contract for those hours in 2011.
Because we've done some things, what I've heard, and what I think
Services
what,
rendered, yeah.
what Phil is coming from, we've encumbered funds to replace a roof, for instance. We've had a contract for funding, let's say in 2011, to replace the roof, and they don't quite finish it in 2011. They finish in 2012, what we paid out of the encumbrance. That same type of contract. The question, I guess I'm inferring, is why couldn't the same type of contract be formulated? Is that because the contractee would be unwilling, do you suppose? Because, I mean,
Because that's a fee for
It's a bid.
service.
Yeah.
That's a fee for
Yeah.
service. This is an hourly
Right.
contract.
it's a fee for service.
So you still
You
set
went
up a
out for bid
contract.
for the roof, you know the total cost of the
They-
bid, they
they've
just didn't
quoted.
happen to finish it, and.
They
Encumber it.
committed to that, so.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but you,
So what happens in your scenario, you say, okay, let's estimate 100 hours.
yeah,
The,
and it takes 50.
right, so you've encumbered money that you shouldn't have encumbered.
Well, we
then
did
it-
that with the school when
then you
we
don't
looked at
spend
the
it.
oil tank, just in case.
So then you don't spend it.
Right.
Let's put it this way, I don't know a single accounting system under the category professional services where they would allow you to get away with that, I guess is what I'm saying.
I don't
know a
either.
single one that.
Right.
I don't
I'd
either,
let
but
that
I'm
fly.
still, doesn't mean we can't start something new. That's where GASB 34 came
Doesn't mean
from.
we can't, I mean, I
Think of
just,
something else to pay for in an audit.
I'm just,
All right.
I don't know, I guess, just trying to balance out the impact of that line. If you know somebody's coming at the
Yeah.
end of the line,
Me
and
too.
it's the same hourly rate, are you contracting them for an hourly rate?
Any other lines in there you guys want to ask some questions on?
Postage,
I'm glad you said that.
planning and zoning postage.
10 grand versus
7,340.
3,100 actual.
Yeah,
Back to the
the
government.
two previous years' actual, including the current working year, don't seem to justify 10,000.
Again, that's a function of how many applications they get in, or zoning code enforcement, and the notices that go out to abutters. If you get a lot of applications next year, you'll need it. If business is down next year, you won't need it.
Isn't that offset by revenue too? Don't the
Yes.
people applying have to pay for that?
They do.
So
There's a
it's
revenue
wash.
offset in the planning department.
So we're gonna look at the general fund
Yeah, but
Not
Yeah.
for
revenue.
all of the postage, but for anything related to applications, yes.
Planning revenues 15,000, zoning revenues 5,000. If those lines would be modified downwards, what would the impact be on estimated revenues? Do we have an idea?
We can get an answer for you. We couldn't give you an answer tonight because we don't
Okay.
have that breakout. We'd have to get that from planning and zoning on how much is related to their applications or enforcement.
Okay. Yeah, John?
Ever since they're on postage, just out of curiosity, do they use the same meter?
Yes.
And what does that meter cost a month?
Postage machine,
You know, I guess approximate.
it's about, I don't have it off the top of my head, but I know where to find it.
I mean, a couple hundred a month or 1,000 a month? I mean, you know,
I think a couple hundred is
Oh.
closer,
all right.
yeah.
And having the postage meter, just asking the dumb question, saves us from licking envelopes and applying the actual postage, not licking stamps? Is that the basic?
The postage meters used townwide by all departments.
Mhm. Do we know how
Postage
many?
meter, rental, and supplies, 2,100
A year?
to us.
A year.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do we know how many envelopes go through that machine a year?
2,100.
That'd be better than that, because that's expensive.
All right, 4,200.
Couldn't tell you. I don't have that with me.
The reason I ask is because we get the bang for the buck.
Yeah, and.
It's nice to put it through so you're not licking anything, but if you're putting 10 envelopes through, it's not worth it. I'm going
But
to
we
extremes.
also use it for, it weighs the packets can be quite heavy. They're not like putting a 44-cent stamp on it.
Well, the tax collector uses it too, right?
No, we send to Mailways for tax and motor vehicle renewals.
I'll say, she,
Right, and so it comes on tape?
Yes,
Right, so it's different amounts, right?
yes.
Okay, I saw a couple of hands. Go ahead, Brian.
Now, what's the advertising line for?
We're back in,
Planning and zoning?
I need something, hold on.
400.
400. You've used it, but I'm just curious what it is.
You have to advertise public hearings.
Move to Goffstown.
Wouldn't that be notices? No?
hopefully
Guys, public
Goffstown's
hearing,
open
okay.
for business.
Well, notices has nothing.
Yeah,
in it.
notices has nothing in it.
No, no, no.
Okay,
It's a good question. I would
Yeah.
think so too.
Advertising is public hearing, legal notices.
okay.
Did you have, Bill?
I just had a question on the last line there, the 72-100. I can't remember what that acronym meant.
Southern New Hampshire
Planning Commission.
Planning Commission.
And we did get our revised estimate for dues, and it's $12,002 is what they will be billing us. So that's an increase over the $11,300 that's currently in that budget.
Are we required to be a member of that group?
No, there's no requirement, but we get all our traffic counts done through them, studies. They're a great support to the planning board.
I know I'm a member of the Conservation Commission, and I know they delivered a product that, let's say it just fell on deaf ears. So I'm having a difficult time seeing the value of spending $12,000 for what they're producing.
I think we have a member of Southern New
I'm
Hampshire.
one of the reps for Goffstown.
glad to
And I'd
hear.
be glad to go over with you what they provide for this community. I think there's
Well,
been
do
a
it now.
conflict of interest with a certain member of the Conservation Commission and these person.
I shared, I'm new to the Conservation Commission, and I shared his sentiment, although I was not as eloquent in being able to express it as he was.
The commission, I guess the commission doesn't see eye to eye with some of the things that they've done for the town, but the commission has, I'm talking about the Conservation Commission, they have not been very open to having conversation back and forth with the Regional Planning Commission. So there definitely needs to be some open communication going on there, because I've seen it happening for a number of years now. But Southern New Hampshire Planning provides all kinds of resources to not only the planning board, but the zoning board, and I'm sure that they provide things to the Board of Selectmen as well. They do not only traffic counts, they do lots of different studies for the town. Currently, they're working on a regional town-wide economic development plan for the entire community. There's about, I forget how many exactly, but I think there's around roughly 10 to 12 towns within our region.
Right, I
And-
think there's 11. And is that something that we requested, that Goffstown requested, or that something that Southern New Hampshire Planning Commission decided that they'll do for everybody?
Goffstown had to say that they wanted to participate in it.
So
It
Southern New
wasn't-
Hampshire offered it, and then we said yes. It
Correct.
wasn't that
That-
we thought something up and then asked them to do it for us.
Right. It's a regional plan for the whole entire region, so Goffstown chose to participate within that.
Okay.
That plan is almost completed. It should be ready in about another month. There's also the Metro, which is part of the Greater Manchester Chamber of Commerce. Goffstown is a member of Metro, which is another regional group of people who are promoting economic development for the entire region. They have monthly meetings where they have speakers come in from the DOT, and they provide information about the 10-year plan and updates. I mean, I'd have to have something in front of me to really give you the whole spiel, but if you go on their website, you'll
been
be
there.
amazed at how much they do.
Don't they also, they help with the John Stark Scenic Byway? They've
They do,
been,
yeah.
which is an economic development measure, and weren't they involved with Rail Trail? Did they help Rail Trail get grants or something?
They-
So,
They were supportive, yeah, we had a letter of support from, the Board of
Rec-
Selectmen recently gave them a letter of support for a regionalized effort for purchasing, so we could get better deals by doing regional purchasing and explore what areas would lend themselves to regional purchasing.
They seem like a natural for that GIS flyover.
I asked
Yes.
them that
Coordinate.
question, and they don't coordinate.
Oh,
They don't at
because
this
that
time.
seems like a great,
Mhm.
It seems to me, from my uneducated opinion, that they're more pushing an agenda as opposed to being interested in hearing what is it that the towns want to do. And 11 towns combining on a GIS, for example, why aren't they helping us do something like that if we're paying them, I imagine they're getting $120,000 from, or $132,000 from the 11 towns that contribute, plus
it's,
gobs and gobs of
It's
it's
state
not
grants.
12,000 for every town. It's based on the size of your community. The dues are based on what your population is.
So it would probably average out, given that Goffstown's somewhere in the middle of the size of the towns, the 11 in the region.
They are responsive to the communities that are involved in it. The planners have their group, they go to the TAC meetings. Local officials, we have representation, I believe our reps are Barbara Griffin.
Barbara, Tony Martz, Hank
Hank.
Boyle, and myself. They're also working on, with the planners right now, they're working on a program called Site Selection, which is, Brian's been attending, and they're trying to get the different towns to buy into this program where you would have a certain criteria to meet for different site plans, and if you met that criteria, it would be easier for the developer to move forward, and that those sites that are shovel-ready would be put on a separate website, and they would work with DRED. I can go on and on. There's so much that they have to offer, and the town has, been very active working with them. Barbara Griffin, who's one of your representatives, is actually chair of the commission this year. And she can certainly come in and speak with you all if you need further information, but there, the list is like this. It's all listed in the town report as well. They put there's a page in the town report every year as to what they've done each year for the town. They recently did something with the John Stark program just about a month ago, I think, that they put on, trying to think what else, the CMAC grant that the town was just awarded for the 2 intersections that Carl talked about. All of that information starts off with Southern New Hampshire providing the guidance. The executive director of Southern New Hampshire sits on that DOT board and kind of, he's one of the voting members, which helps our town get those funds. I can't think of anything else off the top of my head, but we can certainly provide you with more information.
Yeah, the large grant too that they got, the T grant for the rail trail,
Yeah.
was supported by Southern New Hampshire
And
Planning
how much
Commission.
was that, how much was that grant?
345,000?
Yeah, so I mean, it's
Befo-
a
before your
good
question.
investment.
I thought I saw your hand up. Steve has something he
Yeah.
wants to say.
I mean, just going back, just talking just that one grant, you can see how much of a good investment it is for that return on that $12,000. Never mind all the other information that comes. But I just wanted to address when you were talking about the GIS flyover. I mean, we had talked about that as a board too. Wouldn't it be great if we could get together with other towns and hopefully work some type of price? But like just as we're sitting here, imagine every town having to have everyone pass a budget, and all of them had to say, oh, we're okay with $100,000 or whatever it might be for a GIS flyover. So some of the things that that look very practical in nature, when you start looking at the politics and the structure, it's hard to make that come about. I mean, it's a great idea, but once again, how would you get all the surrounding communities all at the same year to say, hey, by the way, we're going to invest in this flyover? But for the 12,000, though, as she spoke, there's just a lot of return on that.
And I would suggest that someone in the town, maybe be the Board of Selectmen, have some be the mediator or something between conservation and the Regional Planning Commission, because I see it as almost a feud.
They need a mediator?
They do. It's been going on for years. And as soon as they come in with something, right away they're the people who, make the presentation, they're attacked. And I've
But
seen
that's
it
not for
happen
us.
for a long
But
time.
that's not for us.
It's not, but maybe
So we can,
do something
we have our
about
own
it.
problems. Phil?
It's bad.
Thanks, Joanne.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I hope you took notes.
I did not.
You can watch the video.
She knows those notes.
All right, Phil.
Not to belabor the point, but I'm gonna ask the one question. We talked about doing traffic studies. Does the town pay for those traffic studies?
No.
They're done for free?
We, through our dues.
Right.
Is there a limitation to the number of studies that we have done?
There's traffic counts, and each year the town puts in.
I'm
they-
talking about just not just beyond traffic. Is there studies and stuff that we can ask the planning commission
You
as a
can,
limitation?
if you have a project, if the planning board has a project come in and they need a review of the study, they will do that for free. They won't go out and do a study for a private developer's site,
No.
but they will review that study, and usually they make comment. When the planning board also finds that something has regional impact, which that gives the surrounding communities the status of an abutter, the Regional Planning Commission will review the plan and make comment back to the planning board as to what, they feel needs to be said about it.
Thank you.
Further planning and zoning. See the numbers? No further questions? Let's go to other general government. And if you notice the third line down, 59010, that's the budget committee.
We have to cut that. Why would we?
It's already been cut. In fact, 2 years ago, when the budget committee made it, what I noticed is our 2,500 went down to $2,000. And we've been contributing, and then we brought it down to 1,800, and Sue asked, and I said, well, it was our intent to try to keep a level funded type of tax dollar amount, so there's 1,800 in there, so you may want to think about that. The 1,800 pretty much is 100% minute taking. I don't think we've spent anything on anything else but in a very long time.
Why not?
Mind you, I am a supporter of just once Dan saying, hey, by the way, we're gonna bring in some pizza or something because we're working late tonight. Just once, but that's all right.
Don't hold your breath.
I
You
know,
won't
I've
live.
always been wondering when that was ever gonna happen.
I don't feel right about doing that, but that, I'm just one. You guys can vote for that, believe it or not.
Wouldn't the educational sessions, I don't know what it's called, the
Yep,
LGC, they go into that line too?
no,
No, they-
there's
Is that
a,
different line?
yep, Sue will explain that.
Under election, there's an employee development line, and it went under there.
Under election, okay.
Yes, elected officials.
That makes sense.
And those were like $15 a pop and stuff, and
Yeah.
they're not very expensive.
Okay.
Look at that, Conservation Commission expenses. In here, we talked about the budget committee, we said that is, 100% minute taking. What are some of the other general government using their expenses for?
Conservation is minute taking, and markers.
Mark, okay, yep.
Historic District Commission is mostly signs and markers, I think, right now, right?
And we have to have money in there for public hearings too, because
Right.
we're we're subdivision of zoning, so we have to have money for postage and public notices and stuff, but most of them are the historic markers.
But we're not spending much.
Actually, there was a mistake. There was a little mix-up this past year. In 2010, we did spend everything. Because I was the chair of the HDC and I was the chair of the 250th, there was a little bit of confusion. But we did actually spend, it was just a bookkeeping confusion. We did actually spend all of it in 2010.
You spent 3,800 instead of 700?
Yep,
So this is wrong?
yep.
Well, there's 3,100 that's sitting in the 250th someplace? Is that what you're trying to tell us?
Yeah.
We're-
It did get worked out because we went through this summer. We had already, we caught it early and we went through, I'm not sure why it wasn't corrected here, but my understanding was that it had been corrected as far as the books were concerned. And in fact, I joked at the time, if this comes up in the budget committee, you guys have to back me up because we did get this straightened out.
I don't remember that conversation.
Yeah.
I don't see anybody backing you up.
Funny. The money would be under civic ceremonies, although I don't see it reflected on, that would have been overspent then.
Well, that was 7,000.
It was overspent in 2010.
Civic ceremonies? No, we budgeted 7,000 and we spent 4,000.
I see 10,485 on my computer.
Then that's where some of that money went.
Oh,
Whoa, that's not what I'm looking at.
It's gotta be that damn
It's not what
accounting
we're looking at
software.
either.
Are we on
It's a conspiracy.
59040?
Well, we should be.
Do we have the same electronic file?
We're talking
And I know the
4,1990,
250th
right?
only
40,
budgeted, only
yeah,
spent 5,000.
$4,035.04, page 11.
Yeah, but we're talking under, yes.
Yeah, 59040.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I got 4,035.
And
Mine's
4 cents.
different. Mine says 12,000. I don't know what you guys are looking at.
What's the
What do you
page?
have,
He's got the
4,035?
same- he's
Yeah,
got the
for some
same
reason,
one.
I
He
have an
does, he
adjustment in
does.
here, 6,450 added to that.
Holder are you on?
We,
Civic
the
ceremonies.
250th spent,
This to that.
it's 5,000, which is what we understood was how much of that we had to spend.
Right.
And that's what we spent for that. The historic district spent its full amount. Or I think like less $100. We always try and keep $100 in there in case somebody files for a certificate of appreciation, or certificate of appropriateness, sorry, within the last few days of the year.
Overspent.
So we did spend all of that.
What
By the way,
about-
for the historic markers, most of that money are matches. We get
Yep.
grants,
Yep.
and then we need money to match.
Yep, from,
It's usually a 60-40, so they pay 60 and we pay 40. And then, like I said, in this year, civic ceremonies,
It's overspent.
I think we were only planning to spend 5,000. And the Historic District Commission will be encumbering the rest of that money, probably, most likely.
You're gonna have a contract?
Yeah. Of course, we're gonna have a contract.
Or,
For hourly services?
No, it's for the signs.
so we look at it and you find some historic, now is that all gonna be a match, or is some of it gonna be an outright purchase?
It'll be, some of that might be an outright purchase. This is a long-term, we have like a list of like 50 spots in town that, and the idea is that ultimately you would, people don't realize how historic Goffstown is, so don't get me started, but the idea is that we get all these markers up slowly, a little bit, you know, one or a couple every year, and then ultimately you make like a map that people can go around and tour, and there's gonna be signs on the rail trail.
Maybe
and
write a
different-
book.
Well, you know, yeah.
Or two.
And so this is a slow program, and we're just starting it. The first signs are gonna be up, I believe, by December 1st. And then we're gonna do a few more every year.
And if you would write a book, what would you call it? I mean,
Signs.
Signs.
Man, it's a plug. Take advantage of it.
No, I won't do that.
Questions on,
Can't wait
let's
to do
see,
deliberations.
say again? The Wellness Committee, we know, we have actually been recipients of some Wellness Committee stuff.
Really?
Yeah, once or twice, we had a meeting with other people that they had provided like little snacks.
Good.
Healthy snacks.
Remember that? Yeah, it happened twice that I know of. Wasn't much. Go ahead, John.
I was just curious, what is civic?
Civic ceremonies, annually we budget $2,000 for the Memorial Day Parade, putting the wreaths on at all the
Oh.
cemeteries of veterans,
Okay.
and then the wreaths at, where they stop at the monuments.
I was just noticing why, I was just curious, it was 7,000 in 2010, spent 4,000, then it was 6,300 last year or this year.
That was the
That was the
250th.
250th, that's
Oh,
why
okay.
it was up for those 2
All
years.
right, and but then it goes back down to the
Yeah.
2,000, that's why, all right.
Yeah, and other little things like receptions or like the meal that we had at the Saturday budget, Board of Selectmen, that would come out of that line.
Civic ceremonies or wellness? Civic ceremonies?
Civic ceremonies. That's what you asked about, right? Civic
Yes.
ceremonies, okay.
Yes, thank you.
Further questions on any of those other general government? Then let's do building inspection. Which is kind of like what I heard for assessment. Just baiting you, because they were doing building inspection, list and measure, right? That's something different. Any takers, anywhere?
What's the difference between office supplies and operating supplies?
Operating supplies are what he uses out in the field,
Okay.
and office supplies is what he uses to run his office upstairs.
What happens if he writes a note in the field but uses the same pad?
Depends.
I am trying to lighten, make
Which
sure
pen
we're...
it depends which pen he uses.
I'm noticing people are looking at their numbers now, and so it gives you a little extra time to continue to see the blue pages. Anything else on building inspection? Human services? Go ahead, Guy. That hand flew up pretty fast.
Yeah.
What are we anticipating this year, Sue, that's going to roughly double what we've spent the last couple of years?
Which line are you on, Guy?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Huh?
Direct assistance, 56,300.
So we're at 43,000 this year, and we're going to 50,000 next year.
Well, we're budgeted, but we spent 25 last year, we're at roughly 25 this year. We're anticipating we're gonna need 50. So what happened to make us think that, or is that a guess? I know we're obliged, and I know there's all kind, I mean, our hands are tied a
Right.
lot of times with this stuff. So this is basically a guess, or do we know something's coming
Well,
up?
it's based on what the changes are at the state level in human services and welfare,
Okay,
and our anticipated
obligation.
obligation as a result of those changes.
So that's an educated guess, but it's based on,
It's based on
Pretty good
changes, yeah,
information. okay.
that the welfare director has heard that may impact the town. Whether it
Probably
does or
nowhere
not-
near enough.
Huh?
Probably nowhere near enough. Economy's
Some
bad.
weeks-
Yeah.
Well, let me pipe in this. In past years, if I recollect, it was, we budgeted a number, and when we reach that number, it's over.
No,
No, we're obliged,
you're
right?
obliged. If you have to overspend that line, you overspend that line.
Okay.
If they're eligible, they're
Even if
eligible.
they're not from Goffstown, is that right?
If they spend a night here, they're
Yeah,
from
if-
Goffstown.
Something
Wherever you
about-
laid your head the night before.
Night before, yeah.
That's right.
It's a tough one.
That is a tough one.
Way back when, they used to have settlement laws. Back in the 70s, and it was where your settlement was, and you had to live somewhere for a certain period of time.
Right.
They used to call them warning out laws. You'd have to go back to where you were born.
Oh, yeah.
They would send you back to your originating town.
I wonder what happens with the guy who spent the night in the dumpster last night.
You should bring that up.
Well, it depends where he woke up. Was it the same community?
Morning.
That's true. That could be a traveling show there.
It was an empty dumpster.
Further,
Things move around.
Yeah.
Sounds like I know from experience, but I really don't.
is there, there's something new in employee development that's a thought process, or is this just a hold for something? That is number 44300.
$100?
Yeah, it's a new line. So usually on some of the other ones, we have employee development, we have an idea of what we're doing with it.
This is the New Hampshire League of Welfare Administrators Association, and that's their monthly meeting.
Have we not been part of that, or it was formerly out of a different line?
I think it used to go under finance when the,
Okay.
yeah, it used to be in finance, and it's more appropriate to be here. Because remember, our welfare director is our town accountant.
Now, she wasn't before. It was different before, or no, the
For her.
welfare was in finance before.
Yeah, last year it was, yes.
Okay, so now we just throw it in human services,
Yeah.
okay. Further human service questions? PEG TV? Elizabeth?
So, the PEG TV section covers both GTV and PEG TV online, right?
Yes.
But
Demand.
Video.
Peg-
on-
Peg on
yeah,
demand,
Peg
thank
on
you.
demand, yes,
That's a contracted service.
yes.
But the GTV is not. The GTV is a town office or
Yes.
department or,
Yes.
okay. So which line is for, so that, is that PEG on demand, is that the consulting
Yes.
contracted line of 1,500?
1,000 of that is there, yeah.
Okay. On that contract, are there, how often do we make up that contract? Is it a yearly contract?
Nope, it's until either party gives 30-day notice they want to cancel.
Okay. My question is just, I wonder if there's some sort of a clause in there about timeliness.
There is not, because that contract is for the license to put it up. The employees, though, do the chapterization and preparing the DVDs to go up online.
So,
So the timeliness may be
but
part
is
of
it
the...
the same person?
No, not necessarily.
Okay, so there's employee costs out of regular wages
To chapterize
associated
the-
with The
videos.
consulting contracted services.
Right. Think of it as a license just to use it to get it up online, that 1,000.
Okay.
The timeliness would be related to the employee having the time to get it up.
So the 6 extra hours that they're requesting budgeting for this year, would any of that go toward that?
Chapterization, yes. That's what they call it, chapterization of the meetings. And
Okay.
that's basically, yeah, 9 hours, an average of 9 hours a week is actually attending these meetings and videoing. Then there's an additional 6 hours to chapterize them each week.
Which is very handy, the
is.
chapterization, by the way.
Okay. Okay, I asked because sometimes there's like a huge delay, you know,
Yeah,
there
I
could be
noticed a lot
weeks.
got up today. I don't know
Yeah,
if you
and
looked.
then they all come in a batch, but I mean, they're really not as useful if like the Board of Selectmen, you know, if that meeting isn't posted within a week and they go on to another meeting, the old meeting isn't as useful.
Right.
Because it's
timeliness
being
is-
superseded by the new meeting, and sometimes there's a big
Yeah.
delay.
They also had some technical difficulties with the server, which delayed some of that.
Okay,
But Dick tells me usually within 4 to 5 days after a meeting, it's up.
okay. I would hope that would be the outside time, so that
Right.
people have a chance to watch it and then be able to respond.
And for weekly meetings.
Yeah,
Right.
Gonna go over,
Understand your
Steve,
concern. I know when we talk about it and we finance, or excuse me, when we fund it, this is not a heavily funded program.
Thank you.
I mean, I would tell you this is a bare minimum to do what they're doing and what they, actually, we get a lot for what is done. So I do agree, it'd be nice to have that, but I think you have to look at the amount of time that people are spending with this and how we're funding it, that we really do receive a lot. And in fact, if you were to ask me, it's one of these areas that it could use a little more.
well, that's kind of my point. I mean,
Okay.
if this isn't adequately funded to do the job in the right amount of time, then we need to adequately fund it. But there's no sense in funding something if we're funding it in a sense that it can't be done adequately. I mean, that's just,
It just going,
either fund it adequately or don't fund it all.
well, and just going.
Ivan's dying to jump in too.
sorry.
Oh, wait, I'll
Jump
go.
on the box, Ivan.
You know, 2 years ago, here we are asking to get it immediately, and 2 years ago, you didn't get it at all. You either watched it or you didn't get it.
Thank you.
I mean, this is so far beyond the pale. I mean, you go to a professional facility like BCTV in Bedford, which has a $250,000 budget, and they run a professional budget. We've got such an operation here. If you've gone there, we have 4 people right now, there were more than that, with equipment lines, and it's only 60 grand total. And if you've gone there and watched the work that goes on, it is primarily volunteer. And I see nobody in town doing this kind of volunteer effort for these crummy funds. And a budget was put in for a $250,000 plan for a facility with a full-time employee. This needs I mean, look around, recording, on demand, I mean, that's huge. Done primarily with volunteer efforts. And it seems outrageous that we can't allow a professional facility to function. And that has been proposed. And in my opinion, it's being squashed intentionally. It's not because they haven't put in the requests they have. And it went on to CIP for a $250,000 facility with a full-time professional. I think we've pushed this volunteer effort to a point of, I mean, this whole thing is foolish.
I think it's maxed out.
You're not gonna get any more from these people. And if you're not careful, the whole thing would collapse, and I think it's sad.
Steve?
And going back to what, I agree with Ivan in the terms that I think they do a great job for the resources they have. And regarding as far as funding more, which people say, you know, we would like more enhancements, more timeliness, et cetera. You gotta remember also, we're sitting here with a budget that we're looking, as we've gone forward, I'm sure you've gone through police and DPW and fire, where we're talking, you know, safety services that we're not fully funding. So there is this part where it all has to be weighed. Would everyone like to have it quicker and faster? Yes, but geez, look what we're doing with just equipment, police department, et cetera. these are all the things that
I
we're
think we've
here to
entered
weigh.
debate mode.
We're here to wait. I just want to make sure that, so when we say, hey, well, when I was going more towards the comment regarding that, would it be nice to have that big piece, but there's a lot being weighed out here, and I think you gotta take everything in its totality, that's all.
Dick?
Yeah, and I think that we're forgetting something. This is funded by money people spend to watch TV from the TV companies. How much money do we take in every year from them? to fund it?
$250,000.
Huh?
$250,000.
Right.
And only 60-something thousand
8,000.
spent.
25% of it goes for
So
what
where
it
does
might
go?
go
You know,
for.
it goes to reduce taxes.
General fund.
It goes to the general fund, yes, and we're arguing over talking and discussing 6 hours,
That's,
if it's crummy.
Where do I find that revenue in the revenue
You
sheet?
will find that revenue under
Other
other
general
general
government.
government,
Got it.
table revenue.
Got it. 280,000 is
80,000 a year.
expected for 2012.
Our last 2 quarters were at 70,000, just over 70,000. That's because the rates went up.
This is the one function which has done so much with so little for so long. It's too bad it's neglected.
Well, I gotta tell you, I think the Budget Committee does a fantastic job for their $2,000.
I agree. Moving on.
Excellent. Further PEG TV?
The last two lines for equipment, are those leases or service agreements for the maintenance charges? Is that a service agreement that covers the
No.
year and?
No, they hire,
Purchase cameras, servers.
I thought it was.
the equipment, they purchase equipment outright. And the maintenance charges, that's for, if something breaks down, they have it repaired.
Okay.
We own all our equipment, right?
Yes.
Yes.
When we were in room 107 for those meetings, and you saw how Andrew came in and flipped the switch and everything was running in the back room, that was not there, what, 12?
Last year.
12 months ago?
Right.
So that's all new. And they have that little, he's hiding in the little room behind
Andrew's
us now
map
with a
room
window.
wasn't there either.
Oh, there he
No,
is.
that wasn't there. Oh, he just popped his head up, or,
So he is awake.
so he is awake.
I'm a fiscal conservative, and I would pitch for more money for this, I really would.
And you will,
I
as
will.
we go, yes,
You
you
can
will.
count on it.
Just to
Well,
put
we're
it in
gonna talk about the
perspective, 4 years ago or 3 years ago, I had to take my little key, open the cabinet, start the video, hit the button. I kind of enjoyed not
I
having
agree,
to do
man. I'd
that.
pat you on the shoulder, but,
Yeah.
No, I wouldn't do that. Hey, just look around, look at all the equipment we've got here. Look at all the equipment.
And maybe we can,
Recording.
we can say, Andrew, show that camera, and then you could do that, you can plan that out for when you do your presentation, all right?
Isn't this much nicer, though? I mean.
It is,
I
yes.
remember having to work the switcher at the selectmen's meetings upstairs way back
Yeah.
when.
No. Oh, yeah,
Remember that too.
that's true, remember that.
Yeah, but somebody, you should go down also to look at Bedford, what they have. It's incredible.
they're probably throwing all their revenue
Sounds like
back.
they're
Yeah,
deliberating.
they are.
Yeah.
You know?
And GTV committee put together a proposal to do this. And
Are you asking for a copy of that or something? I'm
No,
trying to wrap
I
that,
have a copy of the
We don't,
proposal. I
so
know the
you're not gonna
proposal.
help us.
It's in the CIP,
okay,
and it is there.
okay.
And that conversation doesn't go anywhere because there seems to be a counter effort to
Okay.
stop that.
Tab 7 then is completely
That was
open.
for the facility.
Oh, okay, I have no idea, okay.
Tab 7,
Yeah, Paul.
admin. Anything, any questions whatsoever?
No.
John?
I got a few that I wouldn't mind.
Well, please ask.
Hopefully this is the appropriate time.
Well, we'll see.
Okay. The automatic pay increases, that's the step pays, right?
No. Everyone's frozen in step.
Oh, so there is no 4% step?
I think you said tab 7.
But last year, they ended up giving it
No
at the
steps
end,
this
right?
year. No steps this year.
What
No
was last
steps
year?
Next year.
There's a COLA and a step. Which one, so the step is frozen for 2011?
Yes,
Is it frozen for 2012?
yes,
Is the COLA in place for 2011?
yes.
And that amount was
2011 was 2% on July 1st.
July 1st. And is there one contemplated in 2012 for the budget?
Yes,
And that is,
3.25%,
okay,
same as the unions.
So last year was how much, Sue? 2%?
This year.
This year. Oh, this year.
2011
2% in
was
2011.
2%.
And how much for
6 months.
3.25 next year.
3.25 in 2011?
Right.
12.
2012.
For 6 months again, or for the
Yes.
full?
Okay.
And if they had the
Beginning July
step
1st.
increases, how much are those? 4%? If the step increases weren't frozen, what were those?
Step increases are usually 4%,
On top of,
but they've been frozen this year and next year.
but on top of the 2% and the 3.2,
Yes.
if they weren't frozen?
Right.
All right. And then,
If they were eligible for a step.
yes. On the insurance contribution, what is, the average contribution? Is it 10%, 6%?
10%.
It is 10%. What is the max on vacation days that people can get?
4 weeks.
4 weeks?
How many years of service?
18?
Yeah.
18 years, I believe. Yeah.
And how many sick days are allowed to accumulate?
Accrue or?
Yeah, accrue,
They-
to be
they-
carried over to the next year.
You accrue a day and a quarter a month, which is 15 days a year. And we cap that at 30 days, maximum.
After
Carry
that,
over.
it's use it or lose it.
Yes.
And then you can go to 30? 30 days? Oh,
Total, you can carry over the 15 days. So say you get 15 days this year, you don't use any, you can carry that over till you get to 30 days, and then we have a sick bank.
okay. No more than,
How many days are in the sick bank? Or is that something somebody's contributing to for a real situation? I'm trying to compare that to what the state does. I mean, at the state, you either use it or lose it, but if there is someone who's in need, you can contribute some of your funds, but then again, you can build it back up.
Each individual employee gets 30 days. If they reach 30 days,
Mhm.
the cap, they can contribute 2 days a year to the sick bank.
Okay,
And
That's
the
what I'm
bank
looking
is
for.
for anyone to use.
Okay.
If they have a long-term illness.
okay.
And it makes them whole from their short-term or long-term disability for up to 1 year.
And on vacation days, how many are allowed to accumulate and carry over to the next year?
You can't carry over vacation unless you have a unique situation and you appeal to the Board of Selectmen to carry over.
All right. About personal days, can you accumulate those?
You get 1 personal day a year, and you have the ability to earn 2 more personal days for perfect attendance.
now, let's compare the personal days to the number of holidays. Is that in lieu of a holiday?
Yes,
Okay. So how many,
in addition to a holiday.
right, it's in addition
There
to,
are 10
but
paid holidays.
there are 10 paid holidays and 1 paid personal day. Okay.
Yes.
But you said, why can you get 2 more?
You can earn
Perfect attendance.
2 additional personal days of perfect attendance during the year.
And just a few more,
I'm speaking non-union now, when you ask these
Yes.
questions, just so,
yeah.
just want to give you the framework.
Oh, okay, this is non-union. And then the union would be different?
I'd have to open up the union contracts. We have 4 unions, and I'd have to look at each. I think they're generally about the same, but
And then there is a health insurance buyout, right?
there is a cash out, a small cash out, if someone doesn't take health insurance through the town. Say they were eligible for a family plan, and they decide, no, I'm gonna take my spouse's insurance.
Yeah.
So instead of the town having to pay 90% of a, whatever, let's say $20,000 plan, they can cash out at 55% of a single person plan. So if the single person's plan is $8,000, they cash out 4,000.
Do you know how much we spent last year on that?
On cash outs?
Yeah.
No, I couldn't tell you.
Is that a number that could be found?
Yeah, but you'd also have to look at what you saved, because had they taken the insurance, you would have paid a lot more. It's more of a cost savings than it is a cost.
Well, I just know that there's, a lot of facilities that don't even have it.
And so they pay the insurance.
Well, not necessarily.
I mean, if you
So
don't
an
take the
employee would
insurance,
not take it?
there's no,
Yeah, if you don't take the, yeah.
So why wouldn't they
You know.
take
Why
the
wouldn't you
insurance?
take it then?
because you're a military, or your wife's got it, or your
Yeah,
husband's
I'm
got
on,
it.
I'm on my wife's.
In other words, you're not rewarded for
Yes.
refusing, that's what
Yeah.
you're saying?
Yeah. And then there is longevity pay.
Mhm.
And I guess that's it. Yeah, that's it. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Oh, I didn't see which one first. Elizabeth or I? Okay, go ahead, Elizabeth.
I have 3 questions. The debt service is up 23%.
Yes, it is.
Can you explain that?
That is the betterment assessment for the Lynchville Dana Park water.
So it's offset by revenue?
Yes.
Okay.
Actually, if you look at the debt service, see if I have it on this one.
I have 3 questions, actually.
So debt service went up because of Lynchville Dana Park betterment assessment, because of the ERA green drainage project. Those were the 2 new debts this year.
So those are both offset by revenue, or just the ERA
Just
isn't?
the Lynchville, right, the ERA isn't. That was a grant, half of the project cost was forgiven through the grant and the interest on that, but it's still a loan to the state.
Okay, so are we paying off the loan this year, or is it
No, we-
something this is the beginning of
Yeah, this is the beginning.
successive years?
Yes.
So it's gonna stay at
Yes,
this
Lynchville
level?
Dana Park is 20 years, I believe, and the ERA green drainage was a shorter term, was it 5 or 10?
I don't know, I have 5 in my mind on the era.
Pardon me?
I have 5 on the.
5 on the ERA, yeah,
Okay, and this is the first year?
yes.
First year, okay. My second question is, is there any way if I understood correctly, the actuals for this year that we're looking at in this material is dates from September 30th?
No, the year-to-date is as of 10/20.
Oh, 10/20?
Yes.
The date of the report,
Right.
10/20, yep.
Okay, okay. I was gonna ask for more recent ones, but that's pretty close to where we are, that's less than a month. And then my other question is there any way, I'm still like figuring out how to read these sheets, but is there any way to tell which of these expenses are mandatory and which ones are discretionary? I mean, there's some of the things that we talked about tonight where you said, well, the state requires us to do this. Or the state requires this expense or that expense. And is there anything on this sheet that tells us this is something that,
So you're going to define discretion by whether you're mandated by the state to do it?
well, or
Federal?
if something's, we have to do it legally because we've contracted it, or the state mandates us to do it, or there's some other thing, I mean, we can't adjust that number. If the budget committee adjusts that number, you guys are gonna have to readjust it somewhere else. I'd kinda like to know which one of those expenses are,
Would it be possible to, the next update and asterisk those, or something of that nature?
that'd be fine.
You'd have to define a
Yeah,
little
feel
better
like
than that, what you're looking for as far as what's mandatory, you know? I mean, it's mandatory to pay your employees because you have a contract, but you don't necessarily have to have them hired. So, I know what you're
True.
saying. Are you looking for state or federal mandated expenditures?
That would be a start.
Okay.
I mean, that would be a start. I mean, maybe you don't have everything. I mean, obviously, there are some mandatory expenses, like you're going to have to heat your building. But that could be something outside of that. But if there's things that the state or the federal government says, you absolutely have to do this, I'd like to know.
Starting point.
Yeah, I'd like to know. I mean, that would be a start. I'd like to know which ones.
And that would actually have to be defined very well, because, just for a practical example, heat, okay? One person's 69 degrees is comfortable, where somebody else's is not comfortable till 72. And that cost something. That's a small piece. So, where you had mentioned heating a building, well, it's not mandatory to heat a building. I think if you're gonna have employees in there during the day, yeah, for their well-being, you've gotta have heat.
Well, we don't have to get into the gray areas, but I mean, if there's certain, and if there are things that
Perfect.
say you
Yep.
must provide this, but we have discretion on what level, then maybe we keep that as a
Right.
discretionary
And
thing.
there's very
But
few, I
there's
mean,
things-
debt service is a mandatory, I mean.
Well, but I mean, there's conferences
Yeah.
That's
that,
true.
you've just said she
Yep.
has to go to this.
Yep.
Right.
And this is the fee. I mean,
Yep.
that's out of our control.
Yeah. And how many more are those that we haven't identified tonight?
Right. And it seems like it came up with police, too. There was something that they said no.
Accreditation, yeah.
Well, that
Yeah.
is not mandatory. That was a cost-effective method of when they had a particular court case where they said you did not go through this, and they showed them the procedures that they went through, and they followed them. That helped in the court case by saying, you've got it and you're accredited because someone has verified that you are doing those step-by-step actions. It's not just, whatever you want to do. They have processes and procedures, and it helped in there. So it's not mandatory. I don't consider that mandatory.
Okay.
The end result might be something different, but it's not mandatory. And that's why I'm saying we might get particular. There is
And are you looking for mandatory costs or mandatory services? Going to what Guy was saying, there
I
are
think I'm looking
services
for
that are
mandatory
mandated,
costs. I think I'm
Mandatory
looking for
costs.
mandated costs.
I think you might be better served with mandatory services. For example, we heard when we were talking about cemetery that there's some RSA that says the town has to provide a cemetery. Okay, so we know that's a mandatory service, but is it mandatory that we hire someone full-time to do all that stuff, or can we penny pinch and hire somebody as a quarter full-time equivalent to do what we're currently doing now? And I think that's where the gray area comes in, that if you're asking her for information, it's totally up to interpretation, and we would probably have a dozen different interpretations around the room. So, yeah, the cemetery is mandatory, but how we go about providing it, there's a lot of interpretation there.
Right, but that's what I'm saying. Take those things off the table. But if there are things that are a mandatory cost, I would rather know when we start looking at all this.
Yeah, some mandatory costs. If the state says we have to have a property assessor, then that's a mandated expense on our part, because we have to provide the service. But then how we go about it,
Right.
Right, we don't have to do it
We
this
can't
year. We don't have
interpret.
to do it next year or the year after that. It's mandatory in the 5th year to do everybody then. So until you hit the 5th year, it's not really mandatory.
pay me now or pay me more later.
Exactly.
maybe
So
just
it's,
the
everything
larger services would be of
appears to be
interest
more gray,
to start
except for
anyway.
the clerk conference, the tax conference, the welfare, and how that number gets derived is, if there's a formula in the law, great. Otherwise than that, it's a gray area.
It's whatever the association chooses for,
And what association?
the tax collector, the town clerks association.
Oh, no,
chooses
not that
the-
number. I'm talking
Oh.
about the welfare number.
Their association chooses that. They decide,
Who is they?
the welfare association, Welfare Directors Association.
And is that mandatory what they decide? Or are there guidelines in the law that say this is how you calculate it?
No,
It's probably just guidance, right?
guys,
It's,
yeah.
you know,
Yeah, so it's,
It's
so
whatever
that,
their
that's a
training
gray
is.
area.
There are lots of-
Unless the law says the budget committee shall not touch that number from what they do.
It says the town shall provide training.
Well, it's just, not for the clerks again, I'm talking about,
Oh, yeah, the clerks and tax lawyers says
that's,
their
I'm off that
annual
one, I don't care about
conference.
that one.
Sounds
I'm-
like you're on a highlighter service from now.
Yeah, it's a real, everything is gray, and that's why we have debate. But it's good to know, if we do end up with a line like that, we're not going down for a debate for hours for a moot point. That is helpful.
But in the debate phase, Sue doesn't get to be here and participate in that, so how are we
We
gonna
haven't
know?
made that decision yet. We're gonna talk about that next Tuesday.
Okay.
Our process, and don't forget, we're not meeting the rest of this week. We're off. We don't come together until next Tuesday. Next Tuesday is our next meeting, just so that I get your attention now.
That's a good segue.
Next Tuesday is our meeting, and that would be a segue to do, how are we gonna control our debate and our motions? I can explain to you how we've done it the last number of years, but this committee, as a majority, will decide how we want ourselves to operate. and then I will attempt to apply that mode of operation as best as I understood you guys want to do it. How's that? Good.
We want to make your life a living hell as many nights as we can, so we want you to come back for the debate.
I tell you when I'm going on vacation.
Yeah.
As long as it's not a
And
torture.
we'll find out next
Monday.
Tuesday. What, so are we done? I mean, did you have some extra questions, Ivan?
More an observation, because
Well, you have to make it into a question. This is our question period. Go up at the end of your sentence, okay?
how are we gonna deal with the fluctuation in purchasing power of the dollar and the real value of property? Because what I see occurring is something I experienced in 1980.
You've got me confused. I don't know
Guy
how that.
Guy made an observation that when somebody comes in to evaluate the price of his property, it's all over the place.
Okay,
And what occurred in 1980 all over the country, and certainly in Goffstown, is that house prices dropped within a year to about 60%.
okay. How's that affect the budget? I'm sorry.
Because it doesn't affect the budget, only the fact that we can't really nail down that this property tax is extremely regressive. It's an extremely regressive tax, and it's going to create a huge problem. Next year, we could, and nobody knows, but next year, we're going to probably experience a hyperinflation or a deflation. The papers are full of this, and we could experience some very serious declines in prices or increases in real estate. And I'm just,
And that affects our capability of the budget process this year. How? How does that change your mindset on how we're gonna process the
we're going
budget
to have
this
to
year?
do some interesting dancing with property tax rates.
I would say it impacts it because with that in mind, we have to be very careful what we do this year in terms of what the net effect is of what budget we adopt, because
Okay,
it seems it always tends to.
Given that the
lean
property
towards the
tax is real, it's not a fair, it's a very regressive tax, and it really is punishing on anyone who's on fixed income or reduced income, whatever.
okay. So, okay. It's the budget, what the budget does, because the basis for the valuation shouldn't change with no change in your property for 5 years. It's set what it's set for 5 years without changing your property. Am I correct in that analysis? Because we're on a 5-year and we just did it.
Right, unless you.
So
make
if I haven't
improvements
touched,
to
if I
your-
don't touch the property,
Right.
don't do any increases or decreases or whatever, the value is. So at least on the MS1, the inventory form, it is what it is, and that's going to be our, used for the calculation of a property tax rate. Whether we have inflation or deflation or whatever, I mean, the value of your property is gonna stay the same for the calculation of the tax rate.
Didn't the
But that
town
doesn't
just
go
make
into
an
the ability,
adjustment?
your ability to pay. If you have hyperinflation, doesn't that impact your ability to pay the tax?
But what I'm saying, it doesn't affect the calculation of the tax rate.
Fine, I'll give you that.
That's where I'm
That's-
coming from.
that's-
It's a different mindset on what you want to do when you vote, how you vote. But it doesn't have anything to do with the calculation of the tax rate, because that number is stagnant.
I agree.
Okay,
But it
That's
still
where I
doesn't
was
go
trying to
to
wrap it in.
ability to pay.
okay.
And what inflation, hyperinflation can do in impacting
Oh, sure.
taxpayers' ability to pay. So that's all I'm saying.
Well, actually, I think with hyperinflation, your tax bill already went out for this, and hyperinflation, if it's gonna cost you more to pay the same thing, and if you can earn that much money, then your tax bill is.
If you can earn that much
Oh,
money,
well,
yes.
you're talking about wage inflation. It's not the same as inflation.
Correct. So you gotta see what they, while we have Sue and Chatty Don. Yeah, well, you've heard of Tiny, the 280, 610, same kind of thing. Don't get excited about leaving. I still want to chat.
I thought Don,
Do you have further?
pack up his flags.
Do you have further questions for?
He had his billboard, his flags, I didn't know what was going on.
Hey, visiting dignitaries.
I'm sorry.
Any further questions for Sue and Don?
I got a motion.
Motion to adjourn.
We're not ready there. I have administrative announcements, and I got to do it again. When's our next meeting?
Tuesday.
Tuesday, 7 o'clock down here. Get ready so that if you have any final questions, I can write them down and I can get out to the various people. Try to think about what you want and how you want to operate, because if we do that quickly enough, okay, we can go right into, because we don't have a school budget yet, we can go into making motions, adopting our starting point, all of that stuff after I do my annual spiel of how we want to do things. Before we do that, because it will be considered our monthly meeting, we'll have public comment next Tuesday night. We're hoping to get all the minutes of these meetings so we can go through every one of those and adopt them or approve them or make the necessary changes we need to them. So we got a number of things next Tuesday we're going to do, and since next Tuesday is open, it'll be up to you. We could go till whenever. What would your pleasure be since it's a regular monthly meeting? Do you want to still work on the 9:20, 9:30 thing that we've talked about? Because that works well?
Yeah.
Sure.
Okay. If for some crazy reason you guys have all the motions you want to make and they're debated and done on Tuesday, then we don't have Thursday, otherwise plan on a Thursday meeting, okay? I am hesitant, but it'll be the total group, I am hesitant to bring forward a number for the town budget to public session until we get to see the school budget and their request.
Agreed.
That would be something that I think would be premature on our part, is to finish one segment before the other segment, because I'm unsure of what the total tax rate would be. And we may or may not, we may want to come back and visit anything we do. This is the first time ever that we've actually might go into actual making motions without having a school budget. It's never happened. This is my 9th budget, and I've never not had the school budget to make determination on the town budget first. This is a first, and it's
I agree, we gotta take the
somewhat,
whole.
I mean, I want to see the totality of everything, but we also have to get going. Now, I will take a motion to adjourn.
I just have a question.
Yes, before we do
Very
that.
general question. It's not even about
Too
budget.
late.
Not even about a budget.
Rookie
My
mistake.
question is, I know, I'm sorry. My question is, for those of us who are going to school board meetings, for example,
Yes.
and asked to go, are we to be there for just the A and F, or are we
No.
to be there for the entire school?
It's
board
the
meeting?
entire school board
It is.
meeting, yes.
So to stay for the A and F and then leave before the school board meeting,
You've-
we're really
you've-
not doing what we were asked to do.
You're right,
correct?
you've missed.
Kind
You
of want to
missed
be there.
because a lot of the stuff happens at the real meeting.
Right.
A and F is to dig in only to what got spent, and we kind of get that with the numbers, but you get more at the A and F because they talk about more of the details about what encompasses and comprises those numbers. So being at the whole meeting is much more helpful than attending and.
So everybody who's going to the school board meetings is pretty clear on that as far as this committee goes, that if
As far as I know.
you're asked to go, fantastic.
And we'll find out, and on Tuesday, that would be a good time for us to hear that.
Thank you.
Do I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Elizabeth, do I have a second from John Burt? All those in favor signify by raising your hand. If they're all working, I see no hands down, therefore it's a unanimous vote. I thank you for coming. I'll see you next